The situation is indeed saddening. It falls upon the entire international community to protect the human rights of all ethnic groups and all people in a fair, equal, and effective way.
Palestinian-Israeli conflict stems from Israel's prolonged occupation of Palestinian territory.
The Israeli apartheid regime, along with its settler colonialism, serves as the root causes of all crimes.
The real obstacle to peace is obvious. The deepening occupation by Israel of the Palestinian territories.
The Palestinian people have been denied the exercise of their legal right to self-determination.
We warn against the disastrous repercussions on the threats to attack Rafah as the last refuge for civilians.
In a series of unprecedented moves, China has once again taken a stand against Israel, this time at the United Nations Human Rights Council.
The situation is indeed saddening. It falls upon the entire international community to protect the human rights of all ethnic groups and all people in a fair, equal, and effective way. We must put people first. Safeguarding people's interests must be the basis and goal of the human rights cause. People's rights to survival and development should be protected as a priority and pursued with a greater sense of urgency.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi emphasized the importance of protecting human rights amidst global turmoil, particularly addressing the ongoing Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Wang highlighted the devastating impact of the conflict, with nearly 30,000 civilians losing their lives and close to 2 million displaced.
Protecting and promoting human rights is a common cause for all humanity. At the moment, the world is becoming more turbulent. Crises and conflicts keep flaring up, and deficit in global human rights governance is widening. The ongoing Palestinian-Israeli conflict has cost the lives of nearly 30,000 civilians and left close to 2 million people displaced.
China urged all parties to prioritize people's rights to survival and development, rejecting any attempts to interfere with other countries' internal affairs.
We must uphold fairness and justice, stand against the attempts to use human rights as a pretext to interfere with other countries' internal affairs or to curb others' development. We should oppose acts of hegemonism and power politics and reject the practice of double standards. We must stay open and inclusive, respect the diversity of the world's civilizations, and respect all countries' right to independently choose their path to human rights development. Countries should not impose their own values or development models on others, still less creating small blocs and aligning against those with different views.
But China's stance on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict didn't stop at the UNHRC. In a separate move, China addressed the International Court of Justice, questioning the legality of Israel's policies in the occupied territories.
57 years have passed since Israel began its occupation of the OPT. Regardless of the duration of the occupation, the unlawful nature of the occupation and the sovereignty over the occupied territories remain unchanged. Mr. President, justice has been long delayed, but it must not be denied. The settlement of the question of Palestine requires mutual efforts from Palestine and Israel.
Continuing the attack on Israel, the legal advisor to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China went on to say that Palestinians seeking an independent state are essentially just actions for restoring the legitimate rights, the right to self-determination.
Palestinian-Israeli conflict stems from Israel's prolonged occupation of Palestinian territory and Israel's long-standing oppression of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people fight against Israeli oppression and their struggle for completing establishment of an independent state on the occupied territory are essentially just actions for restoring their legitimate rights. The right to self-determination served as precise legal foundation for their struggle. Self-determination of peoples is a fundamental principle of modern international law, enshrined in the UN Charter and the collective human right under customary international law.
Israel, as expected, has come out all guns blazing against China's assertion at the ICJ. In a no-holds-barred official statement, Israel labeled China as Hamas supporters and raised questions on Hamas, endorsing China's stand at the ICJ. The statement reads as follows: Israel regrets the unfortunate statement made by the legal advisor of China's foreign ministry at the International Court of Justice, ICJ, according to which armed struggle is part of the Palestinians' right to self-determination and is a legitimate tool for achieving independence. The laws of war do not permit the systematic and deliberate attack of civilians or the use of civilians as human shields, two war crimes that Hamas commits in the name of armed struggle. At the present time, the Chinese statement could be interpreted as support for the murderous terrorist attack committed by Hamas on October 7th. China should ask itself why the Hamas terrorist organization was so quick to praise the words of the Chinese legal advisor at the ICJ. Both nations stand firm in their positions, refusing to back down. While some nations express support for China's stance on human rights, others stand by Israel's right to defend itself. At the 55th UN Human Rights Session, and on the sixth day of hearings at the ICJ, Palestine, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the Arab League echoed a unified stance, attributing the prolonged conflict and the suffering of the Palestinian people to Israel's occupation.
The Israeli apartheid regime, along with its settler colonialism, serves as the root causes of all crimes, hindering the Palestinian people from exercising their fundamental rights and freedom.
Israeli-Palestinian conflict did not start on 7 October 2023. The conflict is not about a certain Palestinian faction or group. The conflict dates back to an earlier century. But the real obstacle to peace is obvious. The deepening occupation by Israel of the Palestinian territories, including East Jerusalem, and failure to implement the two-state vision, Israel and Palestine living side by side.
The Palestinian people have a legal right to the immediate end of the occupation, and Israel has a correlative legal duty to immediately terminate the occupation. This right exists and operates simply and exclusively because the Palestinian people are entitled to it. It does not depend on others agreeing to its realization. It is a right.
Saudi Arabia took a bold stance by cautioning Israel about the grave repercussions of its threats to attack Rafah. Minister of Foreign Affairs Prince Faisal bin Farhan raised questions about the relevance of discussing rights, while Gaza lies in ruins, and highlighted the international community's silence regarding human rights violations in Gaza.
Every institutional dialogue will be taken into account unless we take into account the situation in Gaza. How can we talk about this while Gaza is under ashes? How can we turn a blind while the people of Gaza are displaced, subjected to the worst violations of human rights? Warn against the disastrous repercussions on threats to attack Rafah as the last refuge for civilians who are there due to the displacement by Israeli army.
While the ICJ may take months to issue its non-binding advisory opinion, it remains intriguing to observe how Israel will navigate and counter the mounting criticism from global forums, particularly from Muslim nations, amidst its new challenge in a prestige battle with China.